Thank you for checking my PC water cooling maintenance guide video out, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to do some pretty advanced water cooling cleaning. But before we get started, I want to just talk about how if you guys are using distilled water and a biocide, and this is your first 6-month maintenance, and your tubes don't look anything like this, and they haven't hardened over time, and you feel that your loop hasn't gunked up at all, then you're probably just going to be okay draining the water, draining the water out and then putting more water back in. Instead of taking apart the loop and cleaning the radiator and stuff like that. But if you are using coolant and doing 6-month maintenance, then I recommend definitely giving it a good clean on every single thing and taking it all apart, depending on how you feel about the tubing, because the tubing is going to be a pretty good indicator on how bad the loop it actually is. Okay guys, so in my loop, previously before the crap tubing look you can see now, my pump actually failed while I was using some blue Mayhem's coolant. So Mayhem's coolant, I'm not bashing on the coolant at all, but I firmly believe that coolant is going to gunk up your loop no matter what eventually. So as you can see, it's gunked it up pretty bad. And then what I did was I replaced the pump res from XSPC, and then I drained all the coolant, and my tubing looked like total crap and it's a mess. So what I did was I just stuck distilled water in it and I kept running it, just so I could get ready to complete this video with you guys, because I knew I was going to end up filming this at some point or another. So this is what the tubing looks like with clear water in it after I just drained the coolant, and it looks like complete crap. It's all yellow, it's gunky, and it has hardened over time, which is not a good sign at all. This is what the tubing used to look like, if you can sort of get a look at that. It's straight up clear, and it's obviously a lot more softer. This is just the stock tubing that came with the XSPC kit that I got, so it's nothing crazy. I'm actually upgrading to this here. This is from Primo Chill. It's the Primo Flex Advanced LRT tubing. This is the UV blue color, and this is a 3/8 inch by 5/8 inch ID/OD tubing. So if you can see, I'm not sure how good you can see this, but basically the outer diameter is the same, because this is 7/16 inch by 5/8 inch. So basically the wall is just thicker on this one, and this is going to allow you to take advantage of the full LRT technology, which is low radius technology, which allows you to get some really hard bends without actually kinking the loop. So just there on this radius, it's actually beginning to limit the water flow, which is pretty amazing, because if you look on this tubing, I just do a short run like this and it automatically kinks up. Anyways, this is great tubing. It's got a very smooth inner bore to it, which is going to help prevent things from gunking up. And I've seen people use the same exact tubing for 2 years, whereas they would just drain their coolant out for like 6 months or a year, and then later on they drain the coolant out and clean the whole radiator and everything like that. So today we're going to be draining everything, taking it all apart and cleaning the radiator, and I guess we'll get started. Okay guys, so we've taken the CPU out, cleaned it, and we've taken the CPU block off and cleaned it as well. So now we're getting ready to actually drain the loop. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull this fitting out, let water drain, because this is going to be the lowest part of the loop, and then if I need to, blow through here and then push it all out through the in port and then right out the out, right into this bowl of nasty water that we have here. So I'm going to get started with that by just kind of removing the hose from this fitting here. And it basically should just all drain out. The reason this is going to probably work so well is because, again, this is the lowest point of the loop, so the lower you bring it, like see we have like constant water coming out of that block. So that about does it. It's going to have a little bit of fluid in here, but that's not a big of a deal. So basically we have it all drained out, and basically if you're going to reuse the tubing, if it's not as bad as this, you can get like some kind of rifle barrel cleaner and then push it through with like some kind of cloth. A lot of people do that if they don't want to reuse their tubing, but in this case I'm switching from using coolant to distilled water, and I'm changing my tubing as well. So I'm just going to be scrapping this in a little bit, and now we're going to take out the pump and res and the radiator and get ready to clean it all out. Okay guys, so now I'm going to go ahead and remove the radiator. So I'm going to take off all these fans and set them aside up like on the top of the PC. And then once the radiator is removed, the pump and res should slip right out, and then, well, then after that, then the whole thing will just be able to be moved as one big water cooling kind of thing. And then we'll move that to the sink area where we'll clean it with a 10% vinegar, 90% hot, almost boiling water solution. I'm going to be cleaning it sort of the lazy man's way, where I'm going to be like filling it up and then like shaking it around instead of actually running like a pump and everything on it. So it's going to work out fine, but it's good enough for me. This radiator's only been in use for 6 months. Something like older radiators that have been used for quite some time, it's probably a better idea to actually run them like for a whole entire hour through that hot water vinegar solution with fans running through the radiator. So here comes the radiator, and I'm just going to set these fans up here, I guess. Alright, so the radiator is out, and oh, come out right now. Here's the big actual water cooling loop itself. We have the pump and the res, the radiator, and the block all hooked up. And then we're going to go ahead and clean the radiator, replace the tubing, and fill it up and do a couple of power cycles with this external power supply here. Alright guys, so I actually decided not to do it the lazy man's way, and I actually made a 90% hot water, 10% vinegar solution in this Gatorade bottle, which I am going to flow through the entire loop here. And so not only is this going to get rid of some of the industrial gunk that's left in this radiator loop, but it's also going to get rid of some hard to get anaerobic bacteria that found its way into the radiator and got kind of caught. The biocide didn't catch. So we're going to set this up with this power supply. And just like doing power cycles for the real thing, we have a 24-pin jumper kind of adapter thing that basically you can do on your own, but I think it's like any green or I think it's the green one to any black one, you short out or something like that. Basically what this is going to do is allow you to simulate like a motherboard connected to the 24-pin pulling power. So if you turn this to the on position, the fan will start running because it thinks that it's pulling power. The second you like unplug it from the motherboard or take this adapter away, the power stops and the fan begins to spool down. So you can control it through there. That's how we're going to do power cycles later, and that's how I'm just going to kind of connect it now. So I'm just going to go ahead and filling this through, and then I'm going to do a 10% vinegar solution, and then I'm going to do 5% vinegar solution. I mean, just kind of measure it out, you know, how I feel. And then do a bunch of regular water solutions, and then do a couple final flushes with distilled water before I actually fill the loop up again. Okay, so we're loosening some air bubbles out of here and doing this as a vinegar flush. We're still on the 10% one that I did a second ago. We're going to let this run for about 30 minutes, then we're going to come back and drain the loop and refill it with 5% vinegar and go on like I was saying earlier. Right now, air bubbles are being still kind of got out of here. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's still a lot in here. Moving this around is going to actually help a little in getting those out. But this is definitely a good way to clean a lot of the components. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, guys, is that we're really running off of straight up passive cooling now on this radiator. If you had something like a 4 by 120 millimeter radiator or something like that, and then one pump, then the passive cooling on that is going to be pretty, you know, good enough that you don't need to run any fans on this. I should probably be running a fan on this right now, as I can start to feel the fins heat up a little bit because there's no fans cooling the water, and the pump is actually heating up the water as it goes. So I'm either gonna connect a fan here soon, depending on how this feels, or just run this for a little bit longer and then recycle the loop. So I guess depending on how long you're doing it, it's smart to have fans on here running on something. But you just want to play it safe with that, or else it can overheat the pump a lot. Okay guys, enough of the boring stuff. So now we're not going to be cleaning anything anymore. So basically what we're going to do is the next step is install the radiator. And I'm going to put these barbs on here. These are 3/8 inch by 5/8 inch barbs that, you know, G 1/4 inch threads is unofficial water cooling standard. These are just going to go right in there, hand tight, and I'm going to install that. And I only bought 2 of these barbs, and on the back of the pump and res from XSPC, these are 1/2 inch barbs. So I'll show you guys how it's possible to actually slip 3/8 inch tubing over a 1/2 inch barb, because that's going to be really hard. We're going to use some hot water needleless pliers for that. As you can see, we have compression fittings for the block. These are going to go in here. Yes, and then I guess that's about it. Alright, so we now have the block, the CPU block in. We have the radiator installed, as well as the pump res just kind of sitting here. Now the pump res is the only thing in this loop that has 1/2 inch barbs, so again I'll show you how to put the 3/8 inch tubing over a 1/2 inch barb. But now we're just going to start running some loops. Okay guys, so I have installed the tubing onto the out port of the CPU block with 1 compression fitting on. We're going to make a quick run straight up to here on the radiator. So the whole loop is going to look like this. It's going to go so like out of the pump res, into the CPU, and then out of the CPU to the in on the radiator, out of the radiator to the end of the pump res. So not too difficult there. So we're going to make a nice comfortably length run here. Typically you always cut it a little too short if you just eye it, so I'm going to cut it hopefully correctly. Probably around here, I think. And that's going to be perfect. A little long if anything, but then we're going to slip it over that barb there. And then the next step, we're going to bring it a short tube right up from the from the radiator straight to the pump res. Okay guys, so this here is the tubing coming from the radiator to the pump res. The pump res is a 1/2 inch barb, so I have almost boiling water, well not quite, but sort of almost boiling water, that we're going to dip the tube in to make it really, really hot and more malleable. And then we're going to stretch it out, stretch the end out with needle nose pliers. And then we're just going to end up stretching it over the barb. So that should be decent. I'm just going to really stretch this out with these pliers here. And I'm going to see if I can go ahead and stick that on the barb. Move the pump res around a little bit. Now that it's at the end, we're just going to put this thing right back in and then run some more tubing. Alright guys, so we have the final run of tubing coming from here where the other compression fitting is installed on the in port of the CPU block. And this is actually going to go, okay, well right now it's going to this tube where it's soaking in hot water because it's going over yet another 1/2 inch barb on the out port of the pump res. Now, some of you are probably saying that it's kind of a stupid way to set this up because it would be smarter to have the radiator like right before the CPU block, but in reality the difference between temperature in any part of the loop is less than 0.1 degrees Celsius. So the order of components pretty much doesn't matter at all. So plus this way I think looks really good. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. So this has been soaking in hot water. I'm going to stretch it out. Much more of the ends out. But yeah, 1/2 inch barbs is definitely quite a stretch with 3/8 inch ID tubing. Probably not recommended, but I was too cheap to do it the other way. But it gets malleable enough, you know, once you at least have have it soaking for a while, then you just stretch it out and it's fine. So that one went over pretty easy. And now the loop is actually complete, where I'm just going to reset that pump res, and all the tubing is finally done running. Alright guys, so the next step is going to be actually filling the loop up. So I've got my 24-pin jumper on the external power supply here, and the Molex power for the pump is plugged into just the Molex cable on the actual power supply. And I've got distilled water in this bottle here that has been cleaned out a lot. And then we're just going to fill it up until the res is full. Now, before I actually start doing power cycles and on this and everything, I should say that it's definitely recommended that you run this dry, or I mean that you run this out of the actual computer case, just to make sure everything works and stuff. But I'm confident that I did this right, and I'm also running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and say this is fine. Nothing's leaking on the back right now, so that's going pretty well. I've got more distilled water here. Had to run across the room and get it. So I'm just going to fill this up. Now with this kind of pump res, the pump will run dry if there's less than half of the amount of water in here. So I'm just going to fill it all the way to the top before I start doing any power cycle. And then it'll quickly run down. And I'm going to flick this on. Okay, so I have the pump res all the way filled up. And I'm going to start running a power cycle in here. And we're going to see some water getting actually pushed through the loop. And the pump res is right above half, so I'm just going to put more water into it. It's probably some pretty bad lighting right around here. But I'm just going to fill it all the way up again. And keep doing power cycles until the loop is pretty much all the way filled up. So it's kind of running it through and pushing it all through and working its air bubbles out. But it still hasn't dropped below half, and I'm just going to put a little bit more in. So the pump has gotten a lot quieter now as the air bubbles are actually working themselves out, and pretty much all of them are gone. But something we can do to help speed up the process a little bit, though it is recommended that you run the system for 24 hours just to make sure that all the air bubbles are worked out. But something we can do to speed it up is make sure to get them all out is tip them back and forth. This is going to work a lot of the air bubbles out of the kind of hard to get places, and it's going to definitely lower your water level some in your radiator. But this is going to speed up the process of actually getting them out. So as you can see, the system is completely finished. I added a couple finishing touches. I added the 2 drops of biocide, which I did forget to add earlier. The biocide that I had, this is just the biocide that came with the XSPC kit. It says 1 drop per liter, so I definitely slightly overdid it, but I would still recommend this just because it's going to help out when it comes to the radiator, because those anaerobic bacteria can get in and get stuck in the top of the rad. Anyways, I added the Molex splitter in the back for the block lights, the pump lights, and the power, the Molex power for the pump res. So it looks really awesome. The system looks great. I'm super happy with it. And anyways, thanks for checking out my PC water cooling maintenance guide, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more computer videos.